Hello, St. Vitus followers. Hi, I'm Caroline. I am here today to talk with AF Cortés, and he will be joining us shortly. But just to give you guys a little bit of an introduction, he is a photographer and a filmmaker. I first became aware of his work because he he photographs a lot of live music, and so he would tag stuff on Vitus. Because I managed the Vitus account, I would always see his photography, and it was just like, it's really, really amazing stuff. After this, I really encourage you to go check it out and follow him on Instagram. And it looks like he's able to join, so I'm gonna.
Hello, Caroline. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Can you hear me?
I can
Sound
hear you
test one,
great.
two,
Yeah,
three. Excellent.
exactly. So, just to kind of get folks a little bit grounded, can you tell me like your name, where you're from, and I guess just a little bit how you got started with live music photography?
My name is AF Cortez, or Andres, which is my first name. And I started in life. I'm original from Colombia, but I've been in New York for, I guess, 22 years, since 1998. So it is 22 years now. And in live photography, I started in a very organic way. I always been going to shows all my life. Music is kind of the driver of everything I do. So I was just, even from when I was in Colombia, I was playing there in a band, but when I moved to New York, I was just going to shows and always have like a point and shoot or whatever camera was relevant at the time. At the beginning, I was never doing it any professionally or anything, and that was like, it's still got like 10 years or 15 years ago. But then I started to kind of figure out that there was something interesting about capturing those live moments, and I just started to go to more shows and take it more seriously. And then I started to shoot for certain publications, and that opened many doors for me. So that was kind of the main element that started to open doors. But at the beginning, it was just out of curiosity or documenting artists that I like, and that's what I continue to do. Like mainly for me, it is the most important thing is just to cover artists that I'm interested in, and I feel there's a interesting story, or musically, or visually, or just they have a strong voice. So that to me is the most important part. Try to document artists that I feel really passionate about. And yeah, it started in a very organic way, like many photographers, just going to shows, and then one thing led to the other, led to the other, until kind of you're, yeah, shooting for larger
Nice.
magazines and things like that. But it's always a kind of a labor of love and
Yeah.
passion for music. That's first for
And
me.
actually, I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit more about what it's actually like to shoot live music. Just because I don't know how many folks out there are photographers, but you've definitely been at shows, like you've seen like a live music photographer kind of hanging out in the front. Um, and if you've seen any of Andres's work, like you can see that it really does capture like this dynamic, crazy action that's happening on stage. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of what it's like to shoot in the moment, but also just like how it works as far as like balancing it with your job, or like, because like you said, you started this because you just liked doing it. So, and I think a lot of people don't realize that's like kind of how a lot of live music photography just starts, because there's
Yeah,
no one. Yeah.
I think that is a great question, because for me the first thing, the most important thing is to be at the moment and to enjoy the music first. I'm not there as a The most important thing for me is enjoy the show, and listen to the music and be present at the moment. And that is the reason I'm usually in the first kind of row or something, or if I have the opportunity to shoot from the stage, that's always great. But I just enjoy the moment. And if you see me taking pictures, I'm not concentrated on like the camera and the settings. I'm just really enjoying the music, and that's the first thing for me. And I really want to. For me, it's very important that that love for music transcends to the images. And sometimes you're lucky and you do, and sometimes you don't. But and I guess with experience of doing it many times, you kind of figure out how to kind of control your camera very fast, because live
Yeah.
music photography is all about kind of fast changes and kind of be ready to get your equipment destroyed
Yeah.
and
Make
I don't
sure
know,
that somebody doesn't
yeah.
crowd surf into your lens. Like,
And it happened to me actually at Vitus at the
yeah.
ceremony show. My 24/70 lens got completely destroyed.
Oh no.
Uh, yeah, but you know what? That's what the equipment is for.
Yeah.
That if you're not using your equipment, I don't. I'm not a, like a. And yeah,
Yeah.
it sucks. It just
It sucks,
the
but
day after I was like, damn it, to fix this lens is more expensive than buy a new one.
yeah.
But that is the purpose of the lens, is to
Yeah.
get destroyed in the middle of war or this show. And I'm happy. That's when I'm the happiest, is when I'm in a sea of
Yeah.
bodies and my camera is like, what it's doing.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
really
assuming most
happy when I'm
people,
doing that.
yeah, I'm assuming most people saw the photo that you provided for us to use. But you can see he's like literally like in the middle of a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that was Michelle Lobianco took that
Yes.
shot. I love it. It
It's a
was
phenomenal photo.
yeah, I was very happy she captured like because the
Yeah.
guitar that was at the Native Son show at Market Hotel. It was before the guitar player of the band jumped to the audience, so it was just that
Nice. Yeah.
moment of, which was amazing.
So one thing so I have some like very limited experience doing live music photography. We talked about this a little bit, like
Hmm.
I've been standing near you in photo pits and just like didn't know it. So
Hmm.
um but one of the things that I always struggle with, and I think that you managed to really capture really nicely, is you're all usually in a lot of these venues, you're in like not the ideal lighting situation. Like
Hmm.
you've either got blue light or red light or like no light.
Hmm.
So I was wondering if you could just kind of talk about uh, the way that you have kind of approached capturing the atmosphere of the show, or kind of the spirit of like the performance and stuff like that.
That is an excellent question. And the reason is, as photographers, we are at the service of the show and not the way around. That's not the show is not our private photo shoot. So if the light is dark, that's the way the artist intended to be. They're not gonna turn on the lights just because I'm there. And we are there at the service of the music and the artist. So I think if the artist intended to have just a blue light that is very dim, yeah, maybe the pictures are not gonna have that amazing contrast, or maybe you put the flash, which I'm not a big fan, that for those two shots, and then put it back in your back, because it's annoying when you have speed light through a whole show. So it is at the, so you have to be creative and figure out every single situation. If they have very bright lights, okay, so maybe I'm
Yeah.
gonna do something with the slow shorts. But I don't know. There's it is very important that we are at the service of the music and the artist, and we just have to figure out how to document it. And sometimes, trust me, many times
Yeah.
when you look at the images when you get home, it's like, oh no,
You've
damn it.
got like four in the works.
Yeah. And those are the ones that you're shooting for a publication, which is the crazy
Yeah.
thing. When you're shooting by yourself, oh, this is great, but that doesn't matter. When you're shooting for a publication, that's when the things get
Yeah.
hard. Like I remember the machine girl that I shot for Revolver at
Yes.
Vitus. That was so hard to shoot that day.
The images
I
came out
was,
great though. Like,
thank you.
and that's one of the things that I was really excited about getting to talk to you, because like all of the stuff that I've seen you photograph, because you shoot at Vitus all the time, like you really managed to capture especially a lot of very difficult lighting situations. Like you've got these like crazy photos. I think my favorites are probably, there was some Dream Crusher set that you got that
Mm.
was just like so intense, and you got this like amazing photo of Dream Crusher just like right up in the face of
Hmm.
somebody, like they were, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite photos actually. I was really lucky to capture that one. And Dream Crusher is it's one of the artists I cover the most in my kind of story, doing kind of the local scene,
Yeah.
because I really enjoy their performances. It is just about the moment. It is about being there. It's impossible to put a Dream Crusher performance, I don't know, in a video or in I just feel that it is about, it is an experience. It's not music. You really have to experience the moment when you're in a Dream Crusher performance.
Yeah, and
So
I
I
think the
think that
things,
one was just being there and suddenly, oh,
yeah.
they're here.
And one of the things that I think like about your photography and also sort of like segueing a little bit into your filmmaking is that you've managed to focus on these artists who really do have this very dynamic experiential performance style. And like everyone has that to some extent, but the group of artists, especially in the documentary that you're working on, which for folks following along, we'll post like a swipe up link to it. But the documentary is called Brooklyn is Burning. The trailer is up. There's a Kickstarter for it. And I know you focus, you said, partly on Dream Crusher and sort of like that kind of milieu. Like there's Machine Girl, Surfboard, Deli Girls, all of these other artists. And I was wondering if you could talk, because I know you started that like last fall, right? So you're in an interesting transition period.
Yeah, that
in
was
filming it.
interesting. Actually, I'm gonna paste here. I don't know if I can copy paste. I just posted the link. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's there. So it's funny because you see the camera.
Yeah.
So basically, I love that part of the Instagram stuff. So that was a project that started like a year ago, and for me, Brooklyn is Burning was I have kind of two lives, one as a filmmaker and the other one as a photographer. And sometimes those lives, they never kind of interconnected. Sometimes they do, and I do music videos, but sometimes they don't. So I was kind of going to all these shows, especially over the past 3 years in New York. Kind of all the local bands were kind of selling out shows or getting bigger and bigger. And I was still going to the shows, but I was feeling that there was a different energy. And to me, that energy started like in 2016 when some guy got elected that I want to mention. And since that moment, I felt that, and it's not necessarily correlated to that, but it is in some bigger way. I felt that there was like a new energy in New York. Everybody was kind of pissed and upset about what the state of the world and the country was. Suddenly, racism and misogynism, everything was kind of free for all. So I felt that there was like a local scene that was united. It like united in an era where America was completely divided. So to me, it was kind of, oh, I'm going to the shows, but suddenly the bands that I was covering, I remember covering Surfboard at Vitus maybe 3 years ago, and there were like only 5 people at the show. And then
all of a sudden,
and then 2 years later, they were selling out shows. Same thing with Bambara, with Bodega, with Uniform, like, and all those bands had Dream Crusher. They belong to different sub kind of cultures. But I was realizing they were selling out those shows, that the audiences was responding to the local bands, which is hard, usually, especially in New York, when we have so many shows and so many options.
God.
You can,
it's
like, one day,
but it's great, but it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, but great. And now we miss it so much. So, so I started to realize that the local scene was kind of bubbling in a way, was really happening something. So that was for me the eureka moment, where I said, "Oh, there's something here. There's a narrative thread here." I think that and it's interesting that happens to indie bands, punk bands, metal bands, noise bands. So for me, it was, oh, well, these bands are selling out shows. The local venues are very full with those fantastic shows. I feel that there's a story here to tell. So that's when I started to document, to think out the documentary. So first you start kind of writing and creating a proposal and a script and all that stuff. And we shot last fall kind of a proof of concept, what they call, or like which is the beginning of our shot. And it was shot during a period of 2 weeks. And the reason we started to shoot was because the one venue that we all love called the Globe was closing. So there was the end of an important era when really cool venue was closing their doors. So I was kind of started to go there and document some of the closing, and then I talked to Dream Crusher and Softport to shoot their shows separately, and also I shot a lot of things at the Globe. And the idea was to start to document that movement that was here in New York, this new music movement that was happening. And for me, it was very important. My perspective is the perspective of an immigrant.
Yeah.
I have a point of view that is unique to myself. But to me, it was very interesting that it was a scene that was uniting like gay, straight, black, white, Latino, like all these kind of things in one different scene or moment. For me, it was
Yeah.
interesting to see. I come from the different era of music where if you're into metal, you just go to metal shows. If you're
Yeah.
into punk, you just go to punk shows. If you're into goth, you just go into goth shows. But
Yeah.
I was starting to see the same people in a uniform show or in a Dream Crusher show or in a surfboard show and a Deli Girl show.
Yeah.
And that to me was fantastic. It was, oh, that's also a narrative thread. And if you think about those bands, they're
Yeah.
so different. If you listen to Deli Girls or Uniform or Surfboard or I don't know, those are or Dream Crusher, they belong to different sides of the record store.
Yeah.
But
And one of the things actually, my introduction to Dream Crusher,
mhm,
and I'm blank, I don't even remember what the show was, but it was like, it was one of those like very uniquely New York, very diverse,
mhm,
different genres on the bill. And it was like Trans Pecos in,
mhm,
I don't even remember when. I just remember being like, wow, this is like, I have never seen this before. This is amazing. And this is also not something that I expected based on the rest of this lineup. And
mhm,
I think that sort of kind of cross pollination is really exciting. And that's
mhm,
one of the things that really jumped out about sort of the bands that you selected for your documentary is they're all kind of pulling from different
mhm.
scenes and different influences. And it's exciting. I miss
And
live
those,
music a lot because
yeah,
I watched your trailer. I was just like, oh, I
yeah,
don't even know what to know.
yeah, editing that trailer was hard for me because it was like, oh man, I really like missed those moments and I missed that part. And but that was kind of the idea of how the documentary was born. Like for me, it was something new was happening in New York, and it happened before. It happened back in the early 2000s with the kind of that indie scene, or like in the 80s with the punk movement, or the
Mm-hmm.
50s with jazz. And it's been happening in New York, and it happened in Seattle, and it happened in other cities. And to me, this new generation of artists was something that was really happening. And every time I
Yeah,
used to go to South by Southwest, everybody wanted to see the bands from Brooklyn. So for me, it was the birth of an era, a birth of a movement, and that's the part I was documenting. And I started last year, and we did the trailer. And the
yeah,
original idea was to move to continue shooting shows this summer, but then
obviously.
COVID happened.
One of
So
the
that's the.
one of the things that I actually thought was also really interesting in the trailer that you've posted so far that a lot of the bands involve people who have moved here from somewhere else, and you were sort of talking about that
Mhm.
also as like part of the immigrant perspective that you bring to this. But then like Dream Crusher talks about coming from Kansas City, I think.
From Wichita, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, which yeah.
Hmm.
And then someone I think it was Surfboard is from
Hmm.
Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering if there was something about sort of because I mean everybody has that kind of like I came to New York from somewhere else, except for the people who grew up here and they're like very
Hmm.
fiercely proud of it. But like I came to New York from somewhere else, and I think especially sort of during the pandemic, as people are kind of like talking about
Hmm.
leaving, I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about how the pandemic itself has kind of shifted some of the focus, or if it's shifted the focus of the documentary at all.
Yeah, it completely changed the focus of the main documentary. I think the beauty of New York is that what makes New York so great because we choose New York. We the ones that I grew up in Colombia always thinking I want to move to New York. And I was not thinking I want to move to LA or to any other place. For me, New York was kind of an intersection of a cultural mecca for me. It's not about music, about the art, about so many interesting things. So that's one thing, and New York will survive and will transform into something else. But for the documentary, it radically changed our story. For us, this moment in time was just how it was gonna go. We were gonna shoot a bunch of live shows, and we're gonna then tell our story any way we want to tell it. But now we feel that we're kind of in a second act. This is like the dramatic moment of our story because things got real. Like now, artists don't have any source of income. You know, they're like people that works in music venues don't have any source of income, and there's not like the I'm gonna work from home and doing Zooms meetings and stuff like that. No, if you're a touring musician, that's your only source of revenue. Or one of the biggest ones, especially
Yeah.
selling albums or selling. So for
Yeah.
us, it is changing New York, and many artists are leaving, and many people are leaving, understandably, because it's hard to live in this city. It's really hard if you don't have an income. So, especially, yeah, first 3 months of the pandemic, maybe you got the unemployment checks and things like that, but now there's nothing like that. So, so for us, it's very important, and that's the reason we did the Kickstarter, to continue documenting the film. Because usually with this type of projects, you have an idea, talk to different networks of people, and try to pre-sell the project, and then
Yeah.
they give you a bunch of money, and then you go and do it, and all great. But in this case, I felt that there was no time to wait for that. For me, it was very important to shoot right now, because right now the story is happening. Like
Yeah.
everybody's struggling. We all struggling. I am struggling. We're all kind of in this music industry. It's very hard for all of us. So I really want to tell the story of the musicians and the venues right now. I really want to shoot, like, what are you doing right now? What, like,
Yeah.
Dream Crusher? Well, like everybody who's in the like any band, even the bigger bands, because
Yeah.
this is also hard for them. So I really want to tell what's happening with the artist right now during the pandemic. So that's the reason we decided to do the Kickstarter campaign, because we cannot wait until some kind of, I don't know, giant pile of cash flies from I
Falls
don't
from
know
the
where.
sky. Yeah.
Yeah, falls from the sky. I found a bag full of cash in the middle of Central Park or something like that.
Yeah.
No, it is happening right now. So that was the reason we decided, okay, let's do a Kickstarter, which is something that I was so out of my comfort zone, but I am usually very, I don't know, more reserved and shy. So I'm not the one who's like posting all the time. Hey,
Yeah.
this is not doesn't go with my personality, so it's hard.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important, because it is not only for us, it is also for the artists. We want to, with this money that we're getting for the Kickstarter, is not only for the production of the film, but it's also to like any artist that is going to be featured, because in the poster we just have five artists or something like that, but we were going to have more, and we're going to have the idea is to document way more the ones that we feature there. That was just because that was the beginning of the project, but we really want to give some part of that money to the artists. So if they sit down with us in an interview, we're going to pay for the time. If we do that interview in a venue, we're going to pay for that time to the venue. So, which is something that you usually don't do in documentaries, because you don't because there's not much money in documentary films. So, so that is the reason we want to do it right now, and that is this urgency of telling the story, because we feel that our scene, I see it falling apart, and it makes me deeply sad and concerned that I was talking to an artist just to figure out an interview, and she's like, no, I moved to LA. I don't know, I might come to New York in 2 months to pick up some of my stuff. So I'm like, okay, let me know when you get back. And things like that, I see it, and many artists are leaving, and many venues are going to close, and we don't know what's going to happen. So for me, it is maybe our ending of our film is going to be when the pandemic ends, and then we shoot a gigantic show and we're all happy. Or maybe the scene that what I thought it was going to be something magic, it's not going to be there anymore. So I really want to make sure we capture that. And thankfully, I photographed the whole world the past 5 years. I went to so many shows, and not only me, a lot of great photographers and filmmakers that have been with me, because I'm just one of them. But that's the reason I think this is so urgent and so important to capture right now. And that was my
No, but that makes perfect sense.
Passionate spiel out why now. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I think that was one of the things that I think has about the like original intention for the documentary that actually made it translate perfectly is that you were kind of focusing on like the closure of a venue that was closing partly because of gentrification and
Yeah.
because of like just the untenability of paying for space in New York
hmm
City.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think, you know, that's one of the main points of discussion over the last 6 months, 7 months about how the pandemic is progressing, is it's really just like solidifying these pre-existing divides. And I mean, obviously venues, like we can talk about that until we're blue in the
hmm
face. Like venues are especially hard hit.
Yeah.
And like, you know, a lot of musicians work for venues, things like that.
Yes. It is an ecosystem, and it is that is a really good point. Many musicians are or they're the sound engineer at the
Yeah,
venue or the bartender, or yeah, it is an ecosystem, and there's an
yeah,
ecosystem that is hurting really bad right now.
yeah. Because the gig-based work, if you've got, you know, a band and you need to go on
hmm
tour, gig-based work is just an easier, more flexible thing.
hmm
So one of the things I also actually do want to kind of make sure that we cover. So in addition to your documentary work, in addition to all of your beautiful live music photography, you also have done music videos.
Yeah.
I know you had one for Uniform that came out on Friday. You had one for Mets that you actually filmed during the pandemic, which like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I cannot believe
Thank you.
that you managed to pull that off.
That was a
Um,
funny story.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
uh,
yeah, and then there's a daughters one that you also
hmm
did.
hmm
And the reason that I bring up the daughters one, and I think this is sort of interesting, is because people just kind of started to notice you because your photos were good.
hmm
And they like Alexis Marshall is like quoted in a couple of publications
hmm
as being like, we went to Andres because like he managed to capture things at our live shows that like no one else captures, like these like weird crazy moments that other photographers weren't really getting. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about um, just sort of your music video work in general, but also kind of the parallels between your photography and your filmmaking.
hmm First, when Alexis said that, I was like a tear, kind of like, ooh. I thought it was so nice that, like the quote he put in the press release.
Yeah.
And to that point, I don't take any of this for granted. I think it's been a kind of a long road for me. But I think my music video work and my photography work, they're both correlated. I think for me, it's very important to capture the essence of a song visually, and my starting point is always listening to the song from a visual perspective. I try not to. The first listen is not to read the lyrics, and it's just what makes me feel, and that's usually what I try to put in a music video. And obviously, it needs to get connected with the lyrics and it needs to make sense. But my approach to music is always very visceral first, and there's a reason why. Because um, when I started to listen to music back in, I don't know, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, back in Colombia, I didn't speak a word of English. I learned English when I moved to New York. Actually, I moved to New York without speaking English. I learned when I moved here. So
That's
that first
insane.
year, yeah, yeah, it was very irresponsible for me. I got here like with my portfolio, like, yeah, I'm gonna work here, and then I didn't speak the language.
And then you're like,
Uh,
maybe I should learn English. Well,
I
your
know.
English is phenomenal, so
Thank you, thank you. But at the beginning, when I was listening to music back in I don't know, when I was like kid, 15, 14, I didn't understand anything of the lyrics. Actually, I made up the lyrics. So it's actually Master of Puppets, master for me was bastard, because that's what I heard. So I have no idea what. But that was my approach to music. It was very visceral. It was interesting because once you learn English and you read the lyrics, you're maybe, maybe I should have not read those lyrics, or maybe. But anyhow, the point is, I always have like a very visceral approach to music videos, and I'm a very visual person. I love I'm a kind of trained graphic designer and evolved into filmmaking and photography, and for me, music videos is the place where I can connect all the things that I do, which is I work as a filmmaker. I work on like on television series and things like that, and I work as a photographer as well. So for me, music videos is the perfect. It's my favorite medium, to tell you the truth, because this is where I can connect the emotional aspect of music, the visual aspect of music, and tell a story that I think can connect with the song into what the artist is trying to kind of tell. And sometimes with certain artists, they give you a lot of leeway. Like for example, Daughters, they didn't want to. For them, was important that that was my interpretation of the song, and because yeah, they're very particular about their lyrics, how they write their music. So, and that was, I felt kind of very lucky that, yeah, this is in a way, it needs to make sense into the kind of this kind of box that the
Yeah.
band is, but it's an interpretation. It is and any music video is an interpretation
Yeah.
of the music. So, for me, it is kind of the music videos are the perfect moment to connect the design aspect, because they're very visual. I always try to make sure everything looks pretty, and also pretty or nasty if it's the
Yeah. Or both,
or
you know,
both. Yeah,
little combination of both.
a little combination. Yeah. So so it's the perfect moment to connect all the lines of art that I'm interested in, which is photography, filmmaking, and design. So a music video connects those three elements, and it is hard, it's painful, it's difficult, because usually budgets
Yeah.
are small,
Very small.
and yeah, you have to figure out how to do them in a very creative way. But I think that's the cool way, and that brings me to the Mets
Yes.
video.
I was
Yeah.
hoping that I could get you to talk more about that because it's so like that's great. So yeah,
Yeah,
go for it.
thank you so much. That video was when they contacted me out. The video was like literally in the worst part of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was really concerned about my future, about everything. Like not only me, like all of us.
Yeah.
I had no, like it was, I think March or April. It was
Oh
early in
God,
the,
yeah.
yeah, it was very early
It
in the
was
game. So
really spooky.
it was very spooky. We had no idea what was going to happen. Like it was kind of that limbo. It
Yeah.
was very difficult for all of us. And but at least right now we know that things are not good. But at that moment we had no idea.
Yeah.
So so that was when I got the commission for that video, and which was uh, excellent. But in the other hand, was how I'm gonna pull off something with social distancing. At the time,
Yeah.
no one was shooting with social distancing.
Yeah.
How I'm gonna pull off something that I cannot go anywhere. So
Yeah.
what I did, I live in the top floor of an old building in New York, but I have access to a rooftop. It is just an old building and it's on a rooftop. There's nothing there, but I have that. So that's a larger space. So I came up with the idea of someone. For me, was the concept of that video was how to let go of the past, and how to be able to move to a different moment. And that's what I was feeling when I wrote that treatment. That's why someone trying to get all these things from those bags and throw them through the orange until she
Yeah.
drowns completely. And but the
So wait,
production,
just so folks have an idea of like what this looks like. There's a woman who's in like a rowboat that you bought for $50 and dragged up to the top of your
yeah,
building,
yeah,
which is
that was,
insane
yeah, that was
and
a
awesome.
crazy. That was a crazy. So the whole concept was like, okay, we have this rooftop, so we have a space. There's no water obviously there, but
Yeah.
I said let's put someone in a boat. We changed the in post production. We can remove the background and we put water, so it looks like she's on the water. And there's two layers in the rooftop. There's like a little thing that is higher, so I could shoot from a higher part of the rooftop. So that's why I did that shot.
Yeah.
And basically, we found I call a bunch of friends that like an art director and a production designer, a cinematographer, and we kind of let's do this in the only way we can do that right now with our own equipment, because we didn't rental houses were closed at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So it was okay. The DP he made some lights at home, so we use those. Use our own cameras, our own things, and in we bought the production designer. This prop house in New Jersey was closing down because of the pandemic, and they were selling everything. So she saw the rowboat, and then we got it for $50, and we got into an Uber from New Jersey and take it upstairs. And I live in an old building with very narrow corridors. So yeah, so we put the boat upstairs, trying with the neighbors. So hopefully they don't think. So hopefully my neighbors are not. They didn't. I was trying to make sure no one saw me like to put the rowboat there. It was obviously there's no. I just didn't want it to call attention to anything like that we're doing a music video here. But anyhow, we put it there, and then we shot for like 2 nights because we wanted to make it very safe. So we didn't want to do a long shoot. So we shot there for 2 nights, all of the underwater stuff. We did it in a kid pool. Again, I got one of those underwater casings.
Yeah.
We didn't have money, so I got one for $50 in Amazon that had a lot of bad reviews.
Yeah.
But in theory,
terrifying.
It's like, it destroyed my camera. But everybody's saying it destroyed my camera in the ocean. I was not going to the ocean. I was just going to my bathtub, and I was going to a kid pool. So I just decided, look, I was going to put it in, out. I don't think anything's going to happen. And that's what we did. We shot with that kind of, it's a Ziploc bag. It's an elevated Ziploc bag. We did all those underwater shots like that. And then we did I still have the boat there actually. And
I was going to ask what happened to the boat.
I still have it, but we broke it in pieces, so I need to take it downstairs and put it in the trash. I'm just waiting for I think it's Tuesdays, but I've been waiting for 2 months for the right day. Anyhow.
You do it like piece by piece.
So it will be piece by
piece. It
will be, so it's kind of, oh, what is this? Part of a boat. But it is, it was a crazy video, and it was a very small crew, and it was kind of we wanted to do it. And for me, it was, okay, filmmaking in 2020, it cannot be about like, oh, a little big equipment and crew and budget. No, you can do stuff with your phone and with your things. But for me, because I'm a control freak, I didn't want it to shoot or Zoom or a phone, so I wanted to look something that looked pretty as well. So that was the reason for me, it was kind of a challenge. How can we do something that looks interesting and it's gonna look timeless, not timeless from the perspective that is not shot in this era. The sentiment is from this, I didn't want to put people with masks or COVID related or me alone in the apartment. No, for me, it was important to have something that reflects the sentiment of this era. But whatever, with a woman and stranded in the middle of the ocean. So that was kind of the casting was very funny. It was all over Zoom and anyhow, that's the story of the Mets video.
So kind of going from that, so with that, I guess, when did you shoot the uniform video that came out on Friday?
Right after the Mets video, actually.
Okay.
It was commissioned like literally 2 weeks after. So it got that video started at the same time as Mets, but we shot it in a different moment. It was now everything was open. We shot like 3 weeks ago. That was a very quick turnaround.
Nice.
Yeah.
And with that one, I noticed, like, so with the Mets video, it was sort of like a little bit more like narrative, I guess. But with the uniform video, there's this like very heavy, like almost sculptural element to a lot of it. So I was wondering if you could sort of talk a little bit more about the like genesis of some of the weird like string sculpture things with the hands and sort of some of the creative concepts that went into that.
When I first listened to that track, it's just that everything started with that piece of music. I think that first, that album is perfect, it's fantastic, and that song is so intense. It was when they sent it to me, it was like I was in the middle of 2 projects, so it was hard for me to get to work on that project. But because I knew we were launching the campaign for Brooklyn is Burning, I was finishing Mets, so to put a music video in the middle and doing it was kind of a atomic bomb. But when I listened to the track, it was like, no, I just
you were like, I have to do this.
I have to do this. I remember when the manager of the band sent me the music the track and said, you should listen to it. And I listened and I was like, I
You're
don't
like,
have time,
shame.
but I'm gonna have to make time. So again, my approach was how do we do something very simple, but at the end is very impactful. But when I listened to the track, for me, it was like getting into an expressionism painting.
Yeah.
It's like being inside a Jackson Pollock painting, or and that was kind of my first image. And then I started to build up from there. And the song is about a friendship gone wrong. So I wanted to explore the idea instead of having two friends and having to cast another person and it's more complicated, more money, blah blah. And also I felt that the best reflection of ourselves, of our friends, is ourselves. Our friends are always similar to us because they like the same music or they like the same, or we went to school with them or whatever. So for me, when a friend betray us is terrible, and
Yeah.
it hurts a lot, and I think we all been through it. So for me, it was important to tell the story of what if the friend is myself. So that's the reason it's a deconstruction of a character. So I wanted to start with Verdan in a kind of in a nice Verdan, like where he doesn't, nothing is happening,
Yeah.
it complete and end in a complete destruction of himself as a character. So that was kind of the inspiration. How do you mix a Jackson Pollock painting or the also the a lot of video art from the 70s and 60s that was influenced
Yeah.
by
I was gonna say
uh,
there's definitely some like Joseph Beuys in there as well.
yeah, absolutely, a lot of Joseph Beuys. That specific movement is very
Yeah.
important, and I love it. So for me, those elements and also make it look like that moment, like that era.
Yeah.
That was the concept. So I team up with a great crew with like really cool makeup artists and same crew that I work with Mets. And yeah, when I sent the idea to the band, my email was like, this one is a little bit out there. I hope you guys like it. And they loved it, and Verdan was so good in it.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and it was hard for him
Yeah.
because
So
imagine being in this makeup
yeah.
10 hours
Yeah,
and
he's just like covered in this like weird gloop.
with maggots and things.
It's
It
gross.
was
It's
nasty
awesome.
as hell. And yeah, the roaches, I found them in my basement. I actually did. I
I
went
was
there.
gonna
Yeah.
ask about that because it stopped like the video ends on this like twitching roach, which is horrifying, but like so
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. I found there's a freaking in my basement now that I don't know. I've been complaining
Yeah.
to a landlord, but there's those roaches that I see every time I go downstairs to take a shower. There's just a lot of them. So I
Yeah.
was like, no, I need to use them for something. So
Yeah. I think right before I moved to New York, somebody told me like it's not a matter of whether you have roaches, it's a matter of whether you can see them. And
exactly.
I've kind of always kept that in the back of
Yeah,
my mind.
yeah.
So
Fortunately, they haven't gone to my apartment, but I if I go
they're
downstairs
somewhere.
to the basement, they're there, and I decided to cast the roaches for the video, and
Casting
that
is a
one.
nice way of putting that.
So yeah, that was all from my from the basement of my building. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm giving terrible PR to my building though.
Your building has served you very well as far as like
Yeah,
a creative inspiration.
it is. In this time, I think it is the only thing I have right now in the sense that you cannot go to a set or things like that. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out.
I guess one other thing that I would love to hear you talk about, just because as far as the way that you've shot a lot of like those three music videos that we've talked about,
Hmm.
they were all in black and white. A lot of your concert photography is also black and white, and I've noticed actually like one of my favorite things that I've seen is that a lot of your stuff. I'm assuming that you're shooting digital, but it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like you're shooting digital.
Hmm.
Like sometimes you play with like multiple exposures. You can,
Hmm.
like because you're shooting in low light, I think often you can get
Yeah.
that like grainy kind of film-like texture.
Hmm.
So I was wondering if you could kind of just talk a little bit about uh, black and white, especially just because like with the I think it was with the Daughters video, you said that like the black and white palette was actually like an important part of the creative process for that.
Hmm. Yeah, for daughters is almost like a requirement, but for me it's where I'm the happiest. What the reason I really like black and white is because it removes everything that you need that is not as important in the story, and it becomes more pure in a way. It's just, especially in photography, it
Yeah.
is all about the action. In the action, it happens in these three lines, and my favorite photographs are the ones that you don't see. You just see just an action that is just captured, and there's no colors or extra elements. It's just the ultimate visual abstractions for me. So it is kind of minimalism in some way. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoy working in black and white in videos and also in photography. But because for me, it is about the simplicity of the image, and it is about the story that you can tell with the image. So I feel that when you're working in black and white, you're removing all the things that are not necessary, and you're just concentrating this one moment when this guy is just jumping from the stage, or
Yeah.
and sometimes color works very well for certain situations, but black and white in videos also aesthetic that
Yeah.
and I love all Bergman films. I love a lot of things that are in black and white that are big influence on me. So that doesn't mean I've done a lot of stuff in color, and most of my commercial works in color, but in black and white is when I'm the happiest.
Yeah. I was going to say, also with the Brooklyn is Burning trailer, like that's also in color, but there's
Hmm.
something very like deliberate about the palette in that. It feels like, I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just like by virtue of like where you were shooting and
No, it
that.
was intentional. It was intentional. We shot some parts in film, and that was kind
Mhm.
of original idea was to shoot the
Oh, no shit.
documentary.
Like
Yeah,
actual, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. No, the 16 millimeter thing. It's not an effect. We shot
That's,
with a Bolex. Yeah, yeah. It's just funny because no one thinks that, oh, it's like the little After
no,
Effects
that's,
plugin. No,
that's extremely masochistic, dude.
I know. Yeah, we shot one part in film, and we wanted to shoot the entire thing in film at some point. Right now, I don't think it's doable. It is doable because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
But in for live music, it's not as
Yeah.
it puts gives you so many limitations that you end up not capturing everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the idea, our master kind of shot was the film, what we shot for film, and everything else is trying to match that universe. So that's the reason it feels like
Nice.
film-like, because
Yeah.
our many of our portrait shots of the when we're interviewing someone, all those portrait shots are filmed. So our digital cameras are just matching that look. So
Huh.
that's the reason it feels filmic, because yeah, our
Huh.
main camera is actually an old Bolex camera from the 1950s.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So just one of the other things, like I know you mentioned when you moved to New York was like 20 something years ago and you started shooting live music, you said somewhere around 15 years ago. I know camera technology has changed a bit over
Mm.
that time. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about whether like some of the updates have impacted your overall artistic process and like I know some people like you're deliberately shooting with like an old film camera for
Hmm.
the documentary, but I would assume that but you mentioned you're doing digital for most of the live music stuff. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about like the ways that advancements in film technology and photography have kind of changed your approach to stuff over the years.
I learned it changed a lot, but I learned in film, so my approach is always like film. I went to school like this graphic design school back in the early 90s, so it was like film was how we
Yeah.
learned photography. So that's how I learned, and then I'm not a kind of a geek in terms that I need to have the latest camera or the latest piece of equipment. Actually, my main camera is 5 years old, 6 years old, and I haven't updated because I got a new Canon USR because of has 4K film capabilities. But
Yeah.
for music, I used a camera that is 5 years old, and I love it because um, for me, and there's photographers that I only shoot film, and they're like very specific that film, 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 and some is like the latest camera. And for me, doesn't matter. It is, if you capture a good image in film, good for you. If you capture a good image in digital, good for you. The medium is not the message. I think the message or the image is the most important. And if you capture it with your iPhone or with the latest Canon EOS 1000 megapixels
Yeah.
or with an old camera, doesn't matter at the end. So because there are photographers that are very, I only shoot film, and there are others
Yeah.
that I only do. So for me, it is, and that's something I discovered later in my kind of photography career. At the beginning, I was obsessed. No, I want to shoot Metallica. I want to shoot Slayer. I want to shoot all these big bands because that's what, who cares about shooting Metallica and shooting Slayer? It's like there's a gazillion
But
pictures
you
better
have
than
also
mine.
shot like these crazy high profile artists. Like there are pictures of like Queens of the Stone Age and like Nick
Yeah,
Cave and all these people
yeah.
that you have shot. So
Yeah, I've been lucky that I've been able to shoot those, but those are not the main
yeah,
focus of my. I think my photography, I was able to have a voice with my photography is when I was started to shoot artists that I felt passionate in the local scene and not random
yeah,
artists, artists that I think they're, to me, I have a very eclectic taste in music. I like so many different things in music. So artists that for me were interesting, and I started to document those. And I felt that when someone tells me in my feed or in my Instagram account, "Hey, I discovered this band because of you," that's the best compliment ever because
that's awesome.
who cares a perfect it's cool to have a perfect. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy shooting Slayer. It's the best thing ever. I enjoy shooting Metallica. Of course,
Yeah,
I grew up watching these things, but I don't think you're gonna have a personal voice if you're just shooting that. I think if you have a personal voice, if you expand and you discover new artists, and through photography, you also help. I feel that photographers, that everybody has a role in this kind of music industry, and our role is kind of help kind of tell the story that many musicians are trying to tell with their music. And because we go there and take some pictures and put it on Instagram, so that story is expanding. It's just a little element of how that story expands and how people discover music. I discover so much good music through my Instagram feed, and I think that's fantastic. So I think for me to have to create a personal voice, that was crucial. Kind of the music discovery aspect. I think it's more important than shooting great pictures of Metallica, unless you are, I don't know, Ross Huffing or someone that
yeah,
has backstage access and
yeah.
all these things. So then you
And you
have
can get
interesting
that
pictures.
sort of
Yeah.
like intimate
Mm.
access to the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas like if you're shooting a Metallica concert, you're probably in a photo pit. You're allowed to shoot the first three songs, and then you're
Three
like
and they're
shuffled
good.
away.
And then you have the same pictures as everybody else because
Yeah,
there's no magic at the end. You might get
yeah,
a really cool picture, but yeah, that's pretty much it with when you shoot those shows. So yeah, I don't think it'll help you have a voice in my opinion. Yeah, you get very well composed pictures and they're sharp and whatever, but for other people that's very interesting. So I'm just talking about my own experience.
but yeah, but like at the end of the day, what you're interested in is also it's how your work gets made. So you
Yeah,
know, that's
in my
yeah,
in my pictures are my playlist in a way.
yeah,
I like those artists that are there. I don't shoot. I usually don't shoot if I want, if I don't feel passionate about something, or I try to shoot artists that I like or I'm interested
yeah,
in or I admire, and that's why I feel that I've been so lucky with the music videos that I've been doing because they're all of them are artists that I deeply admire. Like I've been shooting on Uniform forever. I've been shooting
yeah.
Daughters forever. I've been shooting Street Sex forever, and I discovered those artists in different ways. So it is for me are my favorite bands, you know. So I'm
Yeah.
yeah, for me that's very fun.
And I know we're sort of coming up against time, so I want to make sure that we also talk a little bit about your portraiture because you also have done a number of portraits of folks within the music industry. I saw Plaque Blig has joined, and I know you took some photos of
Yeah,
them.
at
Um,
Vitus actually.
yeah, at
Yeah.
Vitus, yeah, in the
Hmm.
basement, like on the stairs.
I love
Um,
those days.
yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
But I know you've also done some like more formal stayed portraits, like the cover of the new J Jail record is one of your
Hmm.
photographs. So I was wondering
Hmm.
if you could talk a little bit about like because again you are photographing musicians, but you're photographing them like in a sort of less performative and dynamic setting, I guess. Although like more performative in other ways because they have to like sit there and like.
Yeah.
I was just wondering
Be
if you
more
could
patient.
talk a little bit about your approach to that. Also, just like I assume that people kind of got in touch with you the same way that they got in touch with you for music videos, where they just like had seen your photos. So.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same, exactly the same way. My approach to portraiture is completely different because it is usually you don't get that much, depending on what type of project you're doing. For JJL, we have an entire afternoon doing shots. We shot those pictures while Alexis Marshall was recording his new album in Rhode Island. So he was doing the guitar parts, and I was doing a behind the scenes of the recording of the album. And at the same time, one of other assignments for the label for Sargent House was to shoot some pictures with JJL, with Evan. So, but in that case, we had like all the spaces in between. Like he was recording the guitar for a song there, and then I set up the lights. I had some ideas, and like it was a really cool studio in Rhode Island. Machines and Magnets is the name. So for that one, we had some time to kind of experiment, and he went and recorded another song, so I was playing with some other ideas. So we had like a good, I don't know, 3 hours doing photos or something like that. We explored many things and we did a lot of photos. But in some other times, they're like really fast. For example, with Idols, I did a picture that I right before their show in Brooklyn Steel. And for that picture, I just got literally 30 seconds because I was with them kind of all afternoon and hanging out, but they were never together. There's always, or one was doing an interview, the other one was talking. They were always separated, and I already knew I didn't need to take that picture. And the only moment that I had, and actually I really thank Lee, the guitar player, he was like, okay, showtime is in 2 minutes. So I knew that was going to be my time. So I set up some lights in the bathroom, and it was literally got them into the bathroom, chun chun chun, and then 30 seconds later you start to hear the beginning of the first song, which is nerve-wracking because sometimes you don't have time to explain. And I love that, but I'm also freaking out about it because you don't have that's the picture.
You get what you get.
Sucks. Yeah, if it sucks, it sucks. And if it's great, it's great. Thankfully, I really like that picture, and I thought it was a really good moment. And it was a moment.
Beautiful photograph.
Thank you so much. And it's important for me because I've seen them becoming bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was a band in transition. They were not anymore this small band that was playing in kind of mid-sized venues. That was Brooklyn and Steel for the first time. So that was before the Terminal 5 show. So it was, they were headlining Brooklyn Steel for the first time. So that picture for me is super important because it was, and they're going to be huge, I feel. But that is a photo that for me is very important because it's a band in transition. It's a moment in time where they were kind of not anymore this small band that we all love, but now they're this bigger band that we all still really love. So anyhow, that it is different. I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, it totally does.
It is always different, the approach. I know we're
and I would encourage everybody who's watching this now or later to check out on Andres' website, which I think is afcortes.com. I want to say.
Yeah, afcortes.com.
Yeah, he has sections of some of his live music photography, but he's also got these really amazing backstage photographs where you get these kind of like quiet in between moments, and like they're these like really awesome intimate photographs that, I don't know, it's just cool because he's got like a photographic voice where like you look at a photograph and you're like, I bet that's one of Andres's.
Thank you so much.
Not that, it's not very common, I don't think, with a lot of types of photographers. Like it's really impressive that you do have like a as distinctive a voice as you do.
Thank you.
And I know, just looking at the time, we're about to wrap up, but is there anything folks can do to help support your photography, plug the Kickstarter? things like
I
that.
think the most important right now, the biggest support that we're looking for is the Kickstarter campaign for the film, and this is not only for the production. For us, it's really important to also give back to the community
Yes.
and support the artists and venues that right now are in real need. And we want to tell the story right now, not in 2 years. All the documentaries
Yeah.
of a certain movement happened when it happened. Like you see a lot of documentaries of the punk in the 70s. So it's someone looking back. I
Yeah.
feel that the story is happening right now. So if you guys can support if you can, I understand times are really hard, so not necessarily everybody can buy one, get one of the rewards. We have really cool rewards. We have albums, we have posters, we have pictures. A lot of bands have donated their music, which is really cool. We're gonna have more rewards in the upcoming weeks. But if you cannot donate or buy any of the rewards, just share it. I feel kind of humbled by the love that the community, the entire community of artists and the audience has given to the story, and everybody has been sharing it like crazy, starting with Vitus. Thank you so much. And everybody, a lot of people that I just getting to know thanks to this thing, and everybody's sharing the teaser and the poster. Just continue doing it. That makes a difference. If you don't, I understand that if you cannot get one of the rewards, but if you can share it in your Instagram feed or stories or whatever, so maybe your friend is gonna has some extra $10 to give
Yeah.
away or some extra 2,000 or whatever.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that. Like the documentary looks like it's going to be a really like very special, unique thing. Definitely, if you have the means, back it. If you don't have the means, share it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if you want to follow Andres online, Instagram at AF Cortés. It'll be in the description of this. So
I'm gonna put the Kickstarter one more time here if this thing
yeah,
allows me to paste. No, it didn't. Okay, I tried.
and I'll add it in the description later also.
Okay,
So, but
perfect.
thank you so much for taking the time. It was awesome to finally get to talk to you. Huge fan of your photography. So
Thank you so much, Caroline. I forgot to
thanks.
show you. I have your T-shirt.
Oh hell yeah! That's so cool.
I love it.
Awesome.
Bye.
Cheers, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.